Darcy Weir is an independent researcher and filmmaker who has traveled around the world to study the UFO phenomenon.
With a grin and a salute. Before his flight, Major Cooper, along with other Air Force astronauts and space pilots, attended a traditional Air Force dining-in at the Officers Club at Patrick Air Force Base, Florida. Secretary of the Air Force Eugene M. Zuckert stated the need for our efforts in space.
We believe that space can be free to all for peaceful activity only if somebody keeps it free. We are that somebody.
What if there was a sinister threat lurking among the stars? A malevolent extraterrestrial intelligence daring to invade our atmosphere without consent, poised to completely change our existence by revealing themselves to the public. Could their motives be to exploit our world, or have we already doomed ourselves with our own greed? Is the United States Defense Intelligence aware of these possibilities, and do they hold the answers to these mind-boggling inquiries? NASA and various national defense agencies in the United States have been aware of unidentified flying objects, UFOs, for many decades, with the terminology used to classify them evolving over time. Since the late 1970s, the U.S. Air Force and NASA have employed different code names to refer to UFOs. One such code name, Fastwalker, was used by the North American Air Defense Command, NORAD, to designate UFO sightings entering Earth's atmosphere from outer space. The NORAD facility, which previously was located within Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, tracked numerous such bogies annually.
Y'all have Houston, everybody around here has looked at the bird and it looks real good.
Roger, roger.
On May 14, 1973, a Saturn INT-21 launch vehicle blasted off from Cape Kennedy, carrying NASA's first space station into orbit above Earth. Skylab was a 100-ton orbital research and observation platform consisting of an airlock module, docking adapter, orbital workshop, and a solar and terrestrial telescopic advisory called the Apollo Telescope Mount. Orbiting the Earth at an altitude of 440 kilometers, Skylab provided 10,000 cubic feet of habitable living space pressurized to 5 psi, allowing 3-man flight crews to conduct NASA's first real in-depth studies into the effects of long-duration spaceflight on the human body. In addition to microgravity biomedical research, Skylab also served as an orbital observation platform, allowing the astronauts to conduct a variety of exo-atmospheric solar studies and Earth science/resources surveillance operations. During 1973, 3 separate NASA flight crews rode the Saturn 1B booster into orbit, rendezvousing with Skylab and occupying the space station for a total of 171 days. On July 28, 1973, Mission Commander Alan Bean, pilot Jack Luzma, and science pilot Owen Garrett began their Skylab 3 SLM-2 mission, becoming the second flight crew to live and work aboard the space station. During their 59 days in space, Bean, Luzma, and Garrett orbited the Earth 858 times, conducting a variety of experiments and using Skylab's wide array of instruments and cameras to study our Sun and Earth in ways not possible before. At approximately 1635 GMT on Mission Day 55, the Skylab crew congregated in the wardroom to eat their lunch and discuss a procedures review of the day's flight plan. The lunch break also afforded the astronauts the opportunity to gaze out the wardroom window, which was the largest viewing port in the Skylab station. As Skylab's orbital track was passing over the continent of Africa, Jack Luzma noticed a bright red object outside the window, visible well above the Earth's horizon. For over 10 minutes, the crew observed and photographed this bright red UFO, noting that its light intensity was oscillating between bright and dim in 10-second intervals. Finally, at 1646 GMT, as their orbit was passing near Madagascar, both Skylab and the UFO crossed the sunset terminator into darkness and visual contact was lost. Throughout the duration of this UFO sighting, Skylab was in a blackout period and thus no radio contact with the MOCR in Houston via the STDN was possible. The first official report of this UFO sighting over the public net came from Skylab some 4.5 years later.
Did you tell him about that satellite we saw?
Yes, we saw a great satellite. We didn't know if we told you about it.
The closest and brightest one we've seen?
Huge one.
We've seen several. It was a red one.
No, you may have told somebody, but it wasn't this team. I don't remember hearing about it.
I guess we didn't report it. It was reflecting in red light and oscillating.
In the Skylab post-mission technical crew debriefing documentation, astronauts Garrett and Luzma commented further about the unidentified satellite they saw.
Do you want to talk about that satellite?
I saw one satellite that appeared like a satellite would on Earth. I saw one that was not like one that you would see on Earth. So why don't you mention it?
Okay. About a week or 10 days before recovery, and we were still waiting for information to be supplied to us about the identification, Jack first noticed this rather large red star out the wardroom window. It was much brighter than Jupiter or any of the other planets. It had a reddish hue to it, even though it was well above the horizon. It was slowly rotating because it had a variation in brightness with a 10-second period. As I was saying, we observed it for about 10 minutes until we went into darkness, and it also followed us into darkness about 5 seconds later. From the 5 to 10 second delay in its disappearance, we surmised that it was not more than 30 to 50 nautical miles from our location. From its original position in the wardroom window, it did not move more than 10 or 20 degrees over the 10 minutes or so that we watched it. Its orbit was very close to that of our own. We never saw it on any earlier or succeeding orbits, and we would be quite interested in having its identification established.
Commander Alan Bean also kept an in-flight personal diary during his Skylab flight, where he briefly references this UFO encounter. According to NORAD SSN Space Object Catalog tracking data, no known satellites or orbital debris were anywhere near Skylab during this encounter. There is no doubt that the Skylab 3 SLM-2 crew observed and photographed a UFO during their mission, but there were several inconsistencies in the official evidence related to this incident that still should be noted. How long did the Skylab crew observe this UFO? In the post-mission technical crew debriefing, Luzma and Garrett both agreed they observed the UFO for about 10 minutes before it and Skylab passed into darkness. However, In CDR Alan Bean's in-flight diary entry written just a few hours after the sighting, he directly states the UFO drifted along with us for 20 minutes or more. Which crossed the Sunset Terminator first, Skylab or the UFO? In the same technical crew debriefing document, Owen Garrett states the Skylab crossed the Terminator into darkness first, and then the UFO, quote, followed us into darkness about 5 seconds later. Jack Luzma told Mission Control that the UFO, quote, led us into sunset. According to NASA, there were a total of 4 photographs of this UFO that were shot by the Skylab crew during this encounter, taken with a 35mm camera using a 300mm lens. NASA's official Skylab photographic index and scene identification catalog twice references these 4 specific frames of film, frames 2138 through to 2141. On page 41, the 4 frames were cataloged as showing, quote, satellite unmanned. And what about the Channel A tapes? Aboard Skylab was a voice recording system designed to tape any conversations the astronauts had amongst themselves inside the station when they were out of direct radio contact with Houston. According to NASA, the Channel A taping system was not active during the UFO encounter, so we have no audio or transcripts of the astronaut conversations that took place during the sighting. However, during the post-mission technical crew debriefing, Owen Garrett says that the Channel A tape system was active during the UFO encounter. This UFO encounter during Skylab 3 mission remains unexplained to this day.
We're at a disadvantage here in studying this subject because we are dealing with a structure of secrecy that has a lot of the cards that we don't have. But we still do have the ability to learn some facts, and we have the ability to make inferences based on the facts that we know. And we actually know a fair number of facts about clandestine activities in space and anomalous events in Earth orbit and beyond. You know, we do actually have good information on that. So by working with that information, you know, the fact that you might know that NORAD, for example, does and has tracked objects coming in from deep space to Earth orbit. More than once, this has happened. I know of 2 specific events during the 1980s when this absolutely happened.
We have thousands of satellites orbiting the Earth, and some of them are aimed outward, like the telescopes and so forth, but many of them, the majority of them, are aimed down. Right? It's weather or it's, you know, defense related, right? I want to know where those tanks are, that kind of thing. And they're very good cameras. I mean, they can, you know, probably read the license plate on my car, I don't know, but something close to that resolution. In other words, anything that's more than a couple of inches in size, they can see. Right? So if we were really being visited by alien craft, some of these satellites would see them.
There's a woman whose name is Simone Mendez. She's around. She was active U.S. Air Force in the early 1980s, and unfortunately for her, she was presented with information that was illegal for her to see. And she got into a lot of trouble about it. But this information was NORAD, that's North American Air Defense, data describing an object, and not a natural object, coming in from deep space and parking itself in Earth orbit. And she learned about this, and she wasn't supposed to learn about it. And not only Air Force, military police, but the FBI was on her case for a long time, and they made her life miserable. And her documentation is available. I have seen it. I've held it in my hands. She's a slam dunk. That's real. There's another case that I have it. I have this, a little study by a friend of mine who worked at Aerojet, which is a major defense contractor that built the DSP system. That is the Defense Satellite Program. These are geosynchronous satellites. The system, the Defense Satellite Program, that were designed to detect, you know, missile launches and things like that, but are also outstanding UFO detectors. It just turns out that way. They've got all these sensor arrays on them and optical equipment. And on one occasion, on May 5th, 1984, the author of this study is Ron Regehr. He worked at Aerojet for quite a few years.
Experts from DSP are revealing this information for the first time.
We saw something.
The DSP satellite is, in fact, a spy satellite.
The confirmation that an event of some type.
One of these DSP satellites tracked its sensors, read an object that came to it within a 3-kilometer distance in space. That's reach out and touch someone distance. That's very close. It was a 9-minute long encounter. And, you know, it was a very puzzling thing for the analysts who saw that because what could that be? That's an amazingly maneuverable object, like kind of got them scratching their heads. Knew that. Ron is also a very good and seasoned UFO investigator. So he knows the fields. And he gained, legally, by the way, none of this was illegal, he gained access to some bits of information here and there relating to the DSP's tracking of what are known as fastwalkers, that is space-based UFOs. And there's a database that it derives from, which is called the Individual Target Event Database, nicknamed Itty Bitty. If you look at the acronym, the Itty Bitty database. And what that is it's a tracking of the DSP tracked fastwalkers. So all the space-based UFOs. And I think from 1970, Ron got a printout of all of their trackings, and he got them right here. This looks like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but these are readouts of fastwalker trackings by year. This is 1987, 88, 89. Basically about 3 per month. So from 1973 to 1991, it was something like 283 fastwalkers were tracked by the DSP system. Now, that means uncorrelated targets, targets that they got that they didn't know what these could be. They were not Russian or Soviet, or they were not any other that they knew. But what Ron got here was a fax from, and this strikes me as something that's unofficial, but probably true. He has a gentleman who actually I knew him, and he's no longer alive, who says, I have information that at such and such a time, Zulu, May 5th, 1984, a DSP platform detected an object with heat in the 9,000 kilowatt sensor range coming out of deep space and passing within 3 kilometers of the DSP. The DSP star tracking telescope first detected the object, and they use this, and he points out here, the optical system that he's referring to is used for the DSP to gauge its position accurately against known stars. So it has optical equipment, and this optical equipment detected this thing. And he goes on to say, the observation lasted 9 minutes. A detailed investigation failed to explain what caused the sensor reading other than a real object of some type. And this is a drawing that came in, or a graphic that came in with the fax. But some of them do correlate with known UFO events. So, for example, one of them on this database is an exact correlation with a very famous UFO event from the city of Tehran, Iran, in September 1976. It's known as the Tehran UFO encounter, and it's an amazing encounter. Got a couple of F-4s attempting to intercept an amazing object that's just bouncing all over the sky. And, and more, and they couldn't.
The now retired pilot is one of 14 men, mainly former government and military officials from 7 different countries, talking about their UFO experiences. This conference took place in Washington, and the cast of characters was almost strangely, well, conventional. One of the believers, this retired Iranian Air Force pilot, said he saw a UFO while flying.
It looked similar to a star, but bigger and brighter.
General Parviz Jafari says he tried to fire a missile, but much of his plane became inoperative.
All the instrument was fluctuating, the radio had garbled, even I couldn't have communication with my pilot in my back seat with operating the radar.
So none of your equipment worked, your missiles didn't work. Do you think it's because this was an alien from another world? You're sure of that?
Yeah, I'm sure. At about 11 p.m. on the evening of 18 September 1976, Citizens were frightened by circling of an unknown object over Tehran, the capital city of Iran, at a low altitude. It looked similar to a star, but bigger and brighter.
In 1976, a massive UFO sighting took place in Iran. This UFO sighting was also picked up by the DSP satellite system as a fast walker.
All of a sudden, I see this flying object just going round and round and round and going up and up and up. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, I just saw a flying saucer. I saw a UFO.
I was going to prepare myself to shoot it down.
This UFO event was witnessed by hundreds of people in the night sky. Civilians, pilots, generals, and the unerring eye of the Iranian Air Force radar operators.
When I saw this object is flying that fast, then I thought this is not a helicopter and this is not an aircraft. By that time, I said, oh, should be some kind of UFO.
So I picked up the phone, and it was a base commander. He wanted me to know they're going to have the airplanes to take off from his base for the scramble mission.
He alerted the Air Force Command Post, and Deputy General Yousefi decided to scramble an F-4 jet to investigate.
I saw a big star among the other stars, which it was at least twice as large as the normal stars.
The pilot in the first jet lost instrumentation and communication when he got too close to the brilliant object, so he headed back.
We lost communication, and I heard nothing from the pilots, so I was so scared what's going to happen and what happened to the pilot.
Suddenly, Major Jaffer nervously reported that a smaller UFO had emerged from the larger object and was trying to engage him.
And it was coming toward them. They tried to shoot him down. When they squeezed the trigger, it didn't work, and the trigger was inoperative. They couldn't shoot the missiles.
Fearing for their lives, the pilot tried to eject, but the ejection did not work either. Every system was inoperable.
We understood that the ejecting instrument also didn't work. So, in this case, I said to God, oh, God, save them.
The pilot had no choice but to go into negative G-force to escape the seemingly hostile UFO encounter. When the fighter jet evaded the smaller UFO by 10 miles, all onboard instruments and communications were restored to their working order. The pilot then reported that the UFO seemed to be landing on a mountaintop just southeast of Tehran. This landing was confirmed by the radar tower, and Brigadier General Yusuf witnessed it from his balcony with his own eyes.
One of the separated objects landed in an open area, radiating a high bright light in which the sands on the ground were visible.
He bent down and landed on the ground. And now it is a communication between the mother ship and that small flying object.
Following the smaller UFO landing, the Air Force and many civilians reported power outages, which shocked military personnel in awe of these events taking place.
That was strange for us, and we asked each other why the power went out for some seconds.
A top-secret meeting between Imperial Iranian Air Force and the United States Air Force took place soon after this event. Hussein Peruzi, an Air Force controller at Merboot Air Force Base, was present at this meeting.
They heard our report and the report of the pilot. They concluded that no country is able to have such a technology, and all of them believed it should be a strange object from other spheres.
Anyway, so the DSP satellite system detected that object, apparently. Yeah, on that day. It's amazing.
DSP, as I explained before, is an infrared-based detector of things launched from the Earth or entering into the Earth's atmosphere, because we know it can detect what we call fastwalkers. So the DSP can be pointed, so it can be aimed at a country like Iran and the city of Tehran. So if it's aimed in that direction and it produces a report of a infrared detection that's some large incident, and that happens at exactly the same time, contemporaneously with the Iranian Tehran-based fighter jet, the F-4, ran into a UFO and tried to shoot it down. So we don't have 100% proof they're the same, but it is really hard to imagine you could have an infrared detection that happens almost simultaneously with the UFO detection and the two not be related. So it's just, what this says is those old-timey spacecraft that are no longer produced, no longer made, can detect UFOs entering the Earth's atmosphere. Imagine what we could do with the current technology. And so that goes back to the essay Chris Mellon did, which means if we could detect them with old technology, we could really do a really good job with the current modern spacecraft we have in orbit.
The satellite was scanning the skies over Tehran.
Here is the event.
My point is, we have enough good information that we can work with. And yes, there's nothing wrong with reasonable speculation. Sometimes you have to do it. I do it. Because we don't have every piece of the puzzle. And we want to know what that picture looks like. So we do our best, and we're probably wrong with some of our speculations. Probably. That's life. But that's a responsible thing as long as you know what you're doing. You're trying to figure out this difficult puzzle.
Commencing on April 12, 1981 with STS-1 and a new reusable spacecraft would lead the way in a new era for NASA's public space missions.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of Endeavour, going where east and west do meet at the International Space Station.
Houston now controlling.
Houston Endeavour, roll program.
Roger, roll, Endeavour.
NASA's Space Shuttle STS missions were packed with technical achievements as they transported people, equipment, and supplies to and from low Earth orbit while supporting the construction and maintenance of the International Space Station. This reusable spacecraft was designed to embark on a wide range of thrilling missions, including deploying and retrieving satellites, servicing, and conducting cutting-edge scientific experiments.
He's at the very end. This is Yevgeny. Doing a little tour. This is the FGB, and what's cool about this module, it is actually the very first piece of the space station that came up in 1998. The space station has been around for about now manned for 12 years, but it's been up in space for about 14 years. And this was the very first. It is like the Russians' PMM. It has a lot of storage, as you can see. Можно? Снимаем. Чуть-чуть. So here we are in the heart of the space station, really. This is the service module. This is the central post. In case we had any problems, I know a couple of the questions were about what type of things do you have to worry about. And some of the things we have to worry about in space are fire. If we had a fire, if we had a depressurization, like we were hit by a micrometeorite and it made a hole, or if we had some type of toxic atmosphere. We use ammonia for our radiator, so there is a possibility that ammonia could come into the vehicle, and then it would be bad for all of us. If we have any of those problems, we come right here, which we call the central post. It is the main heart of the space station. It was also the first computers that came up here that ran the space station. And so behind this wall right here are these main computers. So we gather here as a group of 3 or 6 and then figure out how we're going to either fight the fire, patch the hole, or solve the toxic spill. And what's cool about this module, of course, it's the central post. It also has great windows right down toward Earth. It has controls to fly in visiting spacecraft if they need some assistance right here. It has Russian computers as well as American computers to help us control anything we need to on the space station.
This program's ultimate goal was to ignite the imaginations of future generations by achieving our knowledge in exciting fields like aerodynamics, material science, and life science. The program ran for 135 missions, culminating in 2011 with a final flight by the shuttle Atlantis.
The stuff that NASA has released or talked about, astronauts have seen stuff following the space station or capsules or whatever, I think they're observing us. There's some speculation that aliens are responsible for us not getting into a nuclear war with the Soviets or the Chinese.
NASA has had a number of cases where they have dealt in some fashion with UFOs. And of course, that is, I'm sure, classified and kept secret and hidden from the public.
STS-29 was off to a great start in terms of making space history. As the primary payload, the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite 4, TDRS-4, was attached to an inertial upper stage, IUS. It was set to be the third TDRS to be deployed. Once deployed, the IUS shot the satellite into geosynchronous orbit, but what the crew witnessed next was far beyond their imagination. As the crew conducted various secondary payloads, including experiments like protein crystal growth and chromosomes and plate cell division, they couldn't shake off what they saw. John E. Blaha was overheard saying something very odd in terms of UFO activity. While the debate surrounding this statement's authenticity would ensue,
check the wrist disconnects to open. Don the thumb loose. Let me do that. See, you're out of alignment.
it was evident that this mission would go down in history as the one that witnessed something unexplainable.
There was an incident with the Space Shuttle Discovery where Don Ratch, who is a UFO researcher, was listening. He liked to listen to the shuttle talking back and forth with Houston. After an hour and a half, he heard one of the astronauts say, "We have a fire." Maybe they had a fire, maybe they didn't. Nobody seemed to be getting excited. And UFO researchers think that what happens in that situation is that they have spotted a UFO or some kind of extraterrestrial spacecraft, and that's a code that they use to describe that. So he sat down right away and started recording.
Houston, this is Discovery. We still have the alien spacecraft under occurrence.
And a couple minutes later, he heard someone on that same channel he'd been listening to. NASA was presented with that. They denied that that was an astronaut, although it was on that same channel. I guess you need about 20 words for a voice print analysis, and there are only 13 words, so we could not prove that it was somebody at NASA saying that, but it was kind of fishy because it was on that same channel that Don Ratch had been listening to for a couple hours. That would have to be a very classified topic.
On the thumb loose.
Houston, this is Discovery. We still have the alien spacecraft under occurrence.
So I'm just driving back from a little visit that I'd paid the JFK Space Center located in Florida. I had heard through fellow UFO researchers about seeing the shuttle Atlantis that's decommissioned there at the Space Center. The incredible thing about this craft, which very few people actually know, is that it's completely covered with high-tech space cameras. When I say space cameras, I mean cameras that are built to withstand the unfiltered light and the harsh conditions of cislunar space outside of the Earth's atmosphere. Now, few people are aware that this remarkable spacecraft has cutting-edge technology for recording video. They actually outfit the spacecraft with far ultraviolet light spectrum space cameras. And what's also very cool about this is that you can see the cameras all over the craft. And we're not talking about like 4 or 5. There are cameras all over the interior of the shuttle bay for deploying satellites and, you know, parts that were used to outfit the International Space Station. They also have cameras on the end of every robotic arm. And there were multiple robotic arms that were connected to the shuttle. You also have the fact that all of these astronauts that went up into space to eventually join the ISS or to just do a round trip on the shuttle were well equipped with cameras either on the ISS or inside of the compartments, the pressurized compartment for the shuttle spacecraft. And a lot of the videos that people question, you know, are these actual UFOs flying around in space outside of Earth, are being caught on these specialized space cameras. So when people say, oh, well, I don't believe that video because it's probably just 3D or CGI or somebody's manipulated the image. No, that's not the case. These videos are being caught on government-operated NASA space cameras, which are untampered with. And they're incredibly important videos most of the time because they're just as important as, let's say, the videos you see being shot by the fighter craft, in which we got the Tic Tac UFO, the Nimitz Go Fast gimbal UFO videos from. So I think what you'll see when we go through all of this UFO video, possible UFO activity video that comes from the NASA space missions, you will see that we're looking at cameras that are capturing this in space and astronauts sometimes talking about what they saw on camera before they, you know, cut the feed or obscure the image or, you know, what they classically do to cover up the UFO.
One type of camera that was continually capturing these objects interacting with Earth and space is called a far-light ultraviolet spectrum camera. During the 1990s, NASA carried out space shuttle missions and recorded footage like this. In this footage of what seems to be a formation of objects moving over the Earth, one object can be seen escaping the atmosphere as we hear NASA explaining the technology of what they use to capture these images.
Mission Control, Houston. This view is being taken with the GLOW camera. Housed in Endeavour's payload bay is one of 4 different experiments that are hitching a ride on the International Extreme Ultraviolet Hitchhiker payload that is housed in Endeavour's payload bay.
A GLOW camera is a code name used for the technology that can capture things which cannot be seen by the human eye but are visible in the ultraviolet light spectrum. This special light spectrum camera technology was extremely expensive at the time. It is also similar to what civilian researchers and military personnel have caught on infrared cameras around the world today. Martin Stubbs, a Canadian television broadcast station manager, took interest in UFOs back in the late 80s and early 90s. Martin knew that he could use the television station's satellite dish to intercept NASA's STS mission video downlink in order to observe what they were seeing and doing in space.
Get a videotape recorder, an SVH machine, an older model, funny enough, not the digital model, that literally, when you rolled the thing, it would break the frames into fields. And in reality, there are 60 individual pictures that make up 1 second of video.